Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they are not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Helen Young Hayes, who is a fellow wise woman. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
And Helen is the founder and CEO of Activate Workforce Solutions. And we recently connected about a month ago, and I was so interested in what she's created and how she got there. Well, obviously, I'm interested in all those things with most people, but she's got a great story about what she's recently created. So wanted to get her on the program. So again, very excited to have you, Helen. Thanks for being here. And I always like to start with the icebreaker questions. So Helen, if you wouldn't mind, tell us where you grew up, how many siblings in your family, and where you are in the birth order, and how do you think all of that shaped you as a person? I know that's a lot of questions, but it's all one theme. How's that?
You'll remind me if I miss something, but I grew up in a small college town in Mississippi. My parents were Chinese immigrants who came to this country on borrowed money and full scholarship. Ultimately, they both got PhD degrees. Mom got hers in chemistry, dad got his in physics, and they had 5 kids and moved our family to Mississippi in the heart of the civil rights movement. I am the second out of 5. I'm the oldest daughter out of 4. So my brother came first, and then 4 girls. And I believe that my place in the birth order of my family did actually shape me to who I am and how I am today, in that I had 3 younger sisters, and my mother was a full-time, very busy working mom. She ultimately became a rocket scientist, so she is a rocket scientist. But so having a full-time working mom and a father who was a professor, I really had to help out a lot at home. And so, I took on a lot of the cooking. I, taught my sisters how to play the piano, and had, a lot of experience as the oldest of 4 girls, helping grow and develop my younger sisters and helping my mom out with things that needed to happen in the house. And so I would say that one, it contributed to me being a leader, and you might even call me a bit bossy, but help me develop leadership skills. And then 2, really help me, develop the ability to step in and help out when something needed to happen or needed to be done, just feeling a lot of confidence that I could step in and help out and cook or clean or do whatever needed to happen to help our house run.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of responsibility for a young person. I am curious, how does your brother, who's older, fit in? Was he then helping your dad with stuff, or did he seem to help as much as you did around the house?
Well, since my brother's not going to be in the audience, I feel I can be really candid. I don't know if you've seen this with other firstborns, but I'll just say that in our family, and in my husband's family, the firstborn, and even with my own 5 kids, the firstborn is someone who is, very much identifies with the parents. And so, and what we also found in our families is that the firstborn had a love of books and really spent a lot of time learning and studying and thinking and growing and developing the intellectual side. And so I think part of it was that my brother was spending a lot of time just reading and doing other things. And then also, gosh, it might be because he is and always has been fiercely independent. And so I think that, maybe to escape the reality of having four sisters and being the only boy in the household, maybe he was a bit independent and retreated a little bit more than I did. I do think my nature, though, is really one to just roll my sleeves up, throw myself into it, get involved, and be in the middle of things. And so I think it was partially birth order, partially my personality.
Personality. Okay. I'm always curious about that because I think birth order does impose on each of us, right, a certain role. And the oldest has a big responsibility, and they certainly relate so well with the parents because they have that one-on-one time or one-on-two time.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the siblings start coming, there's always that expectations. Well, you should have known better, or you're older and you've got to help out. And so, yeah. Then you look at the gender. Then there's the gender aspect too. So very cool. Well, did you have any free time, and what did you do in your free time? What were some of your activities? Is that piano?
Yeah.
I thought your sister's piano.
Oh boy. I mean, I actually, sort of before high school, I had a ton of free time and love to read. So, I really was one who would hide under the covers with a flashlight and read. Loved to play the piano, played the flute, loved sports. I grew up on the swim team, and so swam competitively until I was 17. And so I think that just having a lot of interest, a lot of passions, I always managed to fill my time and keep it really, really full, which is something I still do today.
Yeah, I was going to say you sound very active.
Yeah. I guess I don't think I've been bored for an hour of my life.
Right. Okay, shifting gears a bit, introvert or extrovert?
I would call myself an ambivert. So I like my quiet time. I don't love meeting tons of new people at the same time and having a lot of superficial conversations with them, but I love to meet new people and I'm very comfortable doing it. So I find that I'm a little bit in between. I'm very happy to meet new people, but I don't really like superficial chit chat, and so I like to get to know people when I meet them, and I love to hear their stories. So I'm a bit of both.
Yeah, well, and I heard that term ambivert, I think just in the last 3 or 4 months by someone I interviewed, and I love that. I'm like, wow, because I've always been in the middle there too.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with leaving the corporate world and having been more of a solopreneur, I found I crave the extrovert stuff a little bit more because I do so much now by myself that I do look for that that energy and opportunity to meet in person. And then of course, COVID shut all that down. So now Zoom has to replace that. So, okay. So on a fun meter scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato and 5 being life of the party, where do you put yourself?
Oh, I'd probably put myself at a 4.5.
A 4.5. You're not going all the way to 5.
Oh, no, definitely not. I'm not going to be the one who's telling, all the jokes really loudly to the audience, but I'm going to be in there.
In there stirring things up and having
Mm-hmm.
some fun.
Yeah.
Okay, on the risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being a high risk taker. Where do you put yourself?
Well, I would have thought before I launched Activate 6 years ago that I would have been fairly low on the risk taking scale. And so, I in my first career, I spent 20 years on Wall Street investing in companies. And so, if you're going to invest in companies wisely, you're going to really, really look at the risk reward analysis very carefully. And so I'm not I'm not one to take risks that are not potentially very rewarded, especially in my investment style. But I will say that becoming an entrepreneur has revealed in me that one, I'm a very optimistic person, and I think entrepreneurs have to be crazy optimistic and not necessarily count the cost of what could go wrong and how this might blow up on you. And so I'd say that nowadays I'm probably more of a 4 in terms of a risk taker.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how our work can really shape us and our risk taking, right? In terms of the level of decision making and what types of things we're interested in or required to make decisions on. But then also there's the personal side too, where maybe you're finding is stepping into the entrepreneurial space that, oh, this does feel really comfortable. I love certain parts of it, but then there's parts it's like,
Yeah, for sure.
Got to keep moving forward. Okay, well, Helen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be the founder and CEO of Activate Workforce Solutions, and then we'll get into how did I get here?
Great. Well, I founded Activate 6 years ago to end poverty for people in Colorado. And so that sounds like a really lofty, crazy goal. But I have, growing up in Mississippi and witnessing a very segregated community and witnessing the social and economic apartheid that African Americans have experienced in the South, it really left a big mark on me to want to champion individuals who have been marginalized. And so, unexpectedly, twists and turns, and we'll talk about this, I ended up on Wall Street managing $50 billion. And so, but I had always I'd always felt like my care for underserved communities would be, from an armchair standpoint, and as a donor and a supporter of different people who were actually out there doing the work and helping people who are marginalized. And so I launched Activate because I just couldn't sit in the armchair anymore and watch poverty become a life sentence for so many Americans. And so that's why I launched Activate, because I figured I could cry about it, scream about it, or actually roll my sleeves up and do something about it and see if I can't bring a little bit more success into the space of poverty alleviation and working with people who are trying to become economically self-sufficient. And so I launched Activate really because I felt called to do it. And that was just it. I felt called. And I felt this burning passion in me that I've got to be part of the solution for something that makes me very upset and angry. And so, so that's why I launched it. I launched it with a lot of optimism and also a lot of analysis. So I'm a very analytical person. So looked at the whole space and saw who was doing what and how I could contribute something that was different. When you're in the space working with people who've experienced generational poverty, who've experienced trauma, who have experienced doors that have been closed on them that they didn't have the power to open, it has put me into a position where I have just had a very, very upfront and personal and close view at how people on the margins experience life. And it's a very, very different life from what I grew up in. And so I guess one of the first things about being founder and CEO of Activate is that I have developed so much empathy for people who've been marginalized. Secondly, I have learned a great deal about the systemic reasons for inequity and poverty. And So in the last 6 years, I really have gotten a PhD on the causes of poverty, the factors and systems that keep people in poverty and keep them from thriving, and really felt like I had to bring all of my analytical ability as well as my heart and my empathy into trying to solve this for people in ways that were lasting and impactful. So I've had to be analytical. I've had to develop great empathy. I've had to learn a lot about a space that I really knew about only from the periphery. And I guess as an entrepreneur, every day is an adventure. It is and has been much, much more expensive to launch this than I anticipated. And, I've been funding it with the help of my employer partners, but it's been much more expensive, probably has taken me 3 times as much money, 3 times as long as I anticipated it to be. And it's been infinitely harder than I ever thought it would be to launch this company. But I will also say at the same time that it's been infinitely more rewarding and satisfying to actually be transforming people's lives and helping them achieve all that they were created to achieve. So that's a little bit of what it's been like to be the founder and CEO of Activate.
Well, that was such a great encapsulation of it. I love that. You cover like the emotional aspect, the financial, the kind of the strength that it takes. Man, well, first off, thank you for boldly stepping into this space, because while there are government agencies and probably other nonprofits that provide different services, you were very purposeful about the space or the niche that you went into. So very cool. And this is what intrigued me when we talked, I think back in February, is I'm like, wow, this is so great, because we all kind of have that, what can I do about it? And you're doing something about it. So I do need to talk to you after this about, I'd like to get it, see what I can do maybe to help you. And 2 things struck me. One was that you talked about this, the doors that have been closed for so many people. And then I think about, you were on Wall Street for so long, and there were probably doors there closed for you as a woman, but so different the doors, right? And so different the environment. So anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later. And then what also struck me was, your parents moved here from China. There's 5 kids in your family. I'm thinking, weren't you at a level of, and you said on borrowed money. So where were you in the social economic realm? I mean, did you not have struggles in that area too? You talk about others being marginalized, but you didn't feel marginalized as or part of being in the system, even though you were immigrant and your parents came here in a different way than.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we grew up without any extra money, and so whatever I needed, I didn't like to ask my parents for money, because professor's salary and a research scientist at that point with 5 kids, and my parents both had to start over when they came to this country, and so. Yeah, there was no excess. There was absolutely no extra in our family, but that's not to say that, I grew up anywhere close to not having all of our basic needs met, and having, a lot of opportunities that my parents really sacrificed that we could enjoy. And so, that's how I had piano lessons and flute lessons and tennis lessons, because we just didn't do things like go on family vacations. We didn't go out to dinner. We didn't, when I was making my decision about where to go to college, I looked at brochures. We didn't do anything like a college trip because we didn't have any extra money. So I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying that, grew up without any excess. And, my parents really had to sacrifice to grant us the opportunities that they did, for which I am incredibly grateful and feel really blessed. Anyway, so getting back though to your question, so socioeconomically, I can't really relate to the people that I'm serving. But, growing up in a segregated South, we were the first Asian family to move into this small college town at a time when, race was pretty hot and central to the experience and to the community of this small college town. I did experience my share of being marginalized or being considered other. Um, Groups not knowing really what to do with us and where to lump us. Because I like to say I was a minority among minorities. I grew up Catholic in the Protestant Bible Belt. I grew up as the first Asian American girl to graduate from my public high school, and so on. So yeah, being part of someone who was sort of a curiosity and not knowing, people not knowing where to exactly place me was interesting and challenging. On Wall Street, you know, uh, interesting factoid: 2% of all of the assets that are managed in the United States are managed by women-only funds. And that was the case when I started managing money in 1987, and that is still the case today, which is hard to believe because women obviously are 50% of the population. Women in a very short time will control more than 50% of the wealth, and yet 98% of the trillions of dollars that are invested by men or men with a co-ed team, but only 2% of all assets are managed by women only. And so, yeah, I was definitely sort of pushing the frontier when I was a woman of color managing money. Women of color managing money, it's less than 0.5% of all the assets that are managed in the US. And so, so certainly I was in the minority on Wall Street. I will say though that that I had the benefit of having incredible mentors and champions who were men, who were white men, and that they promoted me, advanced me, pushed me, encouraged me, and fought for me so that I was able to kind of pursue my craft without a lot of the weight of gender or race weighing me down. And so I'm very, very thankful for the male mentors and champions that I had in my life who really fought for me.
Yeah. Well, that's great because not everybody gets that. And sometimes they have the opposite, right? That some are working against versus for. So, wow. And still, I do hate those statistics though, when you look back in 30 years where we come from, you're just like, it's mind boggling, right? It makes no sense. But anyway, we're not here about that. So we're going to go back in time just a little bit and get to the how did I get here part. And you've already given us a little glimpse about being on Wall Street. But back when you were junior high school, what were you thinking you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you have a career mindset at that time?
Well, in junior high school, I was crazy obsessed with horses and used to ride often. And so I thought that this is crazy. I actually thought that I would love to have a horse ranch and live in Colorado, although I'd, of course, never been to Colorado when I was in junior high. But so I thought I'd have a horse ranch and design it myself because I used to love to just draw houses and design houses just for fun. But when I was in high school, I matured a bit, thankfully, and decided that what I what I really wanted to do was either be an architect or be a um, television news reporter and anchor person. So I've loved and loved the news, and felt like that combination of being a strong communicator, but also informing people of things that are important. And yeah, that was something that I really wanted to do. And so when I went to college, my first year I was at Mississippi State University, which is where my parents were on the faculty. And back in the day in Mississippi, you just mostly went to schools in Mississippi. And so I didn't have on my horizon that I would expand outside of that. And so I was on scholarship at MSU, and I majored in communications, again, so I could pursue this, this career in broadcast news. And then midway through my freshman year, my dad came home and he put 3 envelopes on my desk. And these were the applications to Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. And he said, you will fill these out. I want you to apply for these. And I was like, Dad, I was so full of activities and accomplishments at MSU, and my gaze hadn't expanded to include Ivy League schools. And so I said, Dad, I don't want to do that. I'm just so busy here, blah, blah, blah. I just was not something that I had envisioned. Well, my dad is very persistent, and he did give me that trait. And so every day he'd ask me if I'd finished these doggone applications. And so mostly to get him off of my back, not thinking that I would get in, I finished them just to get him to stop bugging me. And then what was completely shocking to me is that I actually got into Yale and Stanford. And then suddenly, it was like the door being flung wide open to my life. It'd been cracked open a little bit. And here I was at Mississippi State University, and then all of a sudden the doors just flung open. And so I just realized that the horizon all of a sudden got really big. And so I had to spend a lot of time thinking about whether to go to Yale or Stanford, neither of which we had any money so I could visit. So I'm looking at pictures and trying to envision myself in Connecticut or in California. And I actually ended up, my mom had a friend whose son was a freshman counselor at Yale, and I spent 2 hours with him talking on the tennis court about his experience at Yale. And of course that sold me, because I didn't speak to anyone who'd gone to Stanford. I just spoke to a Yalean. So that's where I ended up going. And that completely changed the trajectory of my life. And so I really thank my dad for that, and just throwing open the doors to opportunity. So I get to Yale, and I have no idea what I'm going to study. They didn't have a communications major. And so I just took a lot of different courses and ended up liking economics a lot. Just love economics. It's very mathematical, and yet it also is a social science. So it explains people's behavior. And I thought that was a cool combination. So I studied economics, and then I really thought I would follow in my parents' footsteps and ultimately get a PhD and become a college professor. That's what was really appealing to me. And so I studied econ, and then had applied to some PhD programs, and decided that I was wanting some real world experience before I went into the ivory tower. And so I applied to a bunch of roles out of the career counseling opportunities and the campus recruiting at Yale, and had some offers, and they were all very, very different. I looked at everything from retail, working at Macy's as a retail clerk, basically, and doing merchandising, and then looked at banking, and also looked at this one role that sounded really intriguing, which was a research analyst at an investment management firm to analyze industries and companies to help form investment decisions. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a lot of learning and a lot of studying, and that was appealing to me. So that's the job that I took. I took it because it just sounded like a lot of fun, and I thought I'd do that for a couple of years, and then I kept on deferring my entrance into my PhD program, and then just couldn't stop investing in the stock market.
Wow. So you kind of experimented and explored when you got to Yale, but then you started to find those things that you were gravitating toward, your interest, and then found that economics. It's so funny when you mentioned that about economics, is that it does have the science, but then the art of the social side too. I really totally get that. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense then why you are where you are today. Very cool. Mm-hmm. And you got in the workforce, then then things start rocking and rolling too, right? And you find more interests, and then so I'm guessing that the PhD and professorship never really came about, or did the PhD but not the professor?
I did neither, actually, and I do love teaching about a topic that interests me greatly. And right now, moving people to economic success and professional success is something that I feel I can share with a lot of people. And so, and it's much needed in society today. So I still have that I guess, inherent love of educating people or informing people to make the world a better place. But I really like doing the hands-on at Activate rather than teaching about a subject that is endlessly fascinating to me, but perhaps not as interesting to the broad population as economics.
Yeah, well, and making such a big difference that you are in people's lives now is got to be such a driver too. So okay, so you're on Wall Street. You mentioned you had great advocates that helped you. So talk a little bit about that ladder. Did you move then into more leadership roles, or how did your career progress?
Yeah, well, again, I have to say that I not going to recommend this to most people, but I didn't really have a professional career plan mapped out for myself. I loved what I was doing, and I got really good at it, first as an analyst, and then I was given the opportunity to manage money when I was 27. And I'll be honest, I didn't feel ready for it. That wasn't something that I just thought, well, yeah, I'm really, really wanting to manage money at the age of 27. But, the founder of our company really believed in me and just thought I was ready. And so created this opportunity. And then I discovered that I was pretty good at that too. And so then, the investors started following my performance. And then, I had real interest in international. Just I had grown up, spent some time in Taiwan when I was younger, and in France, and I'm very interested in different cultures. And of course, being Chinese American with parents who were immigrants, and raised our family in a very traditional Chinese fashion. So I always had an interest in different cultures. And so when I had the opportunity to step into raising and growing the international assets, that is something that I wanted. And that is something that I really pushed for. I just knew that would be so much more interesting to me than just managing money in US investments and US companies, which felt like everyone was doing it and felt a little bit discovered, as opposed to the undiscovered universe of international stocks and international investing. So that's what I did. And that's how I ended up managing money on Wall Street.
Can you talk a little bit about what decade this is, just to give people a context? Because international investing, it sounds like, was probably new at the time. So I'm guessing, is this 90s?
Yeah, great. So I stepped into managing the Worldwide Fund in 1993. And then I launched the Overseas Fund 2 years later in 1995. And really that was the decade when international investing for US investors just took off. And we did something very different from the rest of the investing universe in that we were bottom-up stock pickers. And so I was agnostic to which country these investments were located in. I was just looking for the best idea I could find. And most of my competitors would make a decision about, oh, I really like Denmark for these macroeconomic factors, and so I'm going to be overweight Denmark, and they build their portfolio that way. I did not do that. I just really liked investing in organic companies that each are unique, that have the opportunity to grow. They're managed by different managers with different talents and different strengths. And so I felt like it was really, truly creative the way that I and our whole team at Janus, that we invested.
So it was feeding you still got to learn and study and read about things, right? And research. But then you were also making decisions, and it was at an international level. So yeah, all kind of fit into to all of your interests there. So so at some point though, I'm guessing things kind of ran its course and you got, stagnant or stuck to where now all of a sudden you're like, I need to make a change, to where you decided to start Activate. Or did you start that before you left?
No. So actually my investment career, I spent 20 years on Wall Street, and my investment career ended when I decided to retire upon the occasion of us adopting our 5th child. And so I've got two adopted kids and 3 bio kids. And my personal tipping point, chief investment officer, managing $50 billion and having, 4 kids, my tipping point was the 5th child. And I just thought, I am at my limit. I can't have another baby and raise 5 children under the age of 10 and do them justice. And so I decided to retire when we adopted our 5th. And I'm really happy that I did, because then I stepped out of the workforce for over a decade. I just spent that time focusing on being with my family, raising my kids. And I'm so happy that really was the happiest decade of my life. And I'm really feeling so blessed that I got to hit the timeout button and spend that precious time with the kids.
Yeah.
Now they're 18 through 27. It's a completely different story. And so, so I wasn't actually really looking for a second career and a first calling, as I call it. But again, I just felt called to launch it, and I just couldn't stop myself from starting Activate.
Well, again, you started such a great program that's making a difference. So thank you for your service, and thank you for getting to this point in your story. I mean, you really covered so many pieces and parts and how you got there. It's funny how you can connect the dots backwards, right? But you said, I didn't really have a plan on how to move my career forward. And I got to tell you, that's most people. There's very few that have a plan, and then many who have had a plan through all those that I've interviewed. Sometimes start and then shift. And yeah, it's been so cool to really hear how all things play out. So, but we do need to start wrapping up. So tell us, if you would, when you look back, what has served you best when you think about your career? Is it a strength, a personality trait, or maybe a habit or discipline?
I think it is probably that I love to work really hard with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm at whatever I'm doing. And so, never say quit, never give up, keep on working, keep on persisting, and just do it with a lot of focus and a lot of energy. So I'd say, yeah, my ability to work with a tremendous amount of passion and enthusiasm at whatever I'm doing, whether it's being at home full time with my kids, or whether it's managing billions of dollars, or helping people achieve economic freedom through the dignity of work. It's that, I think, that trait that has possibly served me the best. And I will also say that in integrating my faith with my work and my life has also been sort of a guiding star for me. Just yeah, weaving faith into what I do.
Yeah. I love that though, where you talk about bringing energy to whatever you do. Sometimes people are like, well, the thing has to energize me. And it sounds like, no, you're coming in. No, I'm bringing the energy to it. And that there's a difference there, right? If you're looking for something to create energy for you, you're probably never going to find it, right? But if you're the one bringing the energy.
You know what? So that is so true. That's really great that you picked up on that, because I'm reading Angela Duckworth's book called Grit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what she says. She says, like, you bring the passion and the focus and the energy to something, and then you become a master at it. Then you begin having impact on the world around you through this thing that you are doing. And I'm not going to say that, like, work doesn't feel like work sometimes. I mean, work is hard. Work can feel really draining. But I do think that you're right. Bringing the passion to it is part of what has helped me be successful.
Yeah, great, great. Well, and any words of wisdom that were impactful for you in your career, maybe that helps you kind of get to this place, or that you would like to share with others?
Well, I guess I would have sort of micro and macro words of wisdom. And so my micro words of wisdom, putting on my econ hat, right? Which is that just in terms of the tactical, how to do something, how to be successful, is I always tell young people, make yourself indispensable, and then you can call the shots. And so, you don't call the shots and then become indispensable. You have to make yourself indispensable first. And what does that look like? Well, you do that by putting a lot of passion and energy and time and commitment into what you're doing. And so that's kind of like just a tactical strategy. And then I guess on a macro basis, because I have entered what I'll call the real purposeful half of my life, I think that the macro advice that I would have for people is, think about what it is that in the world that either brings you joy by bringing others joy, or something that makes you mad that you just got to fix. And so whether it's poverty or the environment, or helping immigrants and refugees find their way to a better future, whatever it is, figure that out. Figure out how you're going to leave the world a better place than it was when you got here. So I think that is what has brought me a lot of joy.
Yeah, I love both of those statements, because both kind of tap into your energy, and your energy can come from joy, or maybe your energy comes from frustration that you want to fix something. But either way, what is that energy, that passion, and how do you find that? And really, so you got to pay attention to what you're feeling and bringing to the world. So. Mm-hmm. Well, Helen, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I really appreciate you. You've been very thoughtful and reflective and vulnerable and authentic, all of those pieces. So thank you so much. And
I was going to say, this has been really fun. So thank you.
Well, good. That's what I hope for. It's one of my latest interviewees said it was almost indulgent to get to spend an hour, kind of talking about yourself and your life. So hopefully I can bring a little bit of joy and bring my passion in, right, about stories and how people are making a difference. So
yeah. Well, thanks, Kathy.
And listeners, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe below so that you'll be alerted as other podcasts and interviews are published. If you have any questions, you can post them on my website, lifestorycurator.com, which is also where I'll post this interview, and I'll post some social media information about Helen and Activate Workforce Solutions so that you could take a look at that if you'd like to get involved with that organization. And on that note, I would say stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing these stories. Have a great day.